to Guitar Safari. How y'all doing? Anyways, I'm just going to talk a little bit about guitars and you know, vintage ones, newer ones, Japanese, USA, copies, relics, whatever. Basically, I've got quite a few guitars. As you can see, it's just a small selection of them. I've been collecting and playing guitars for probably like 30 years or more, 35 years. Been getting into vintage guitars lately, and probably well, 10, 15 years. And I used to have a lot of Ibanez gems, the Steve Vai signature models, which are awesome guitars. I still have a few, but how I got into vintage guitars was I started reading the Vintage Guitar magazine, you know, when I lived in Canada, and it was just something that kind of interested me, that I got interested in. And I thought, well, you know, I got lots of cool shred guitars and a couple ESPs and that, and you know, I think I had a couple Gibsons, and then I got a 1986 vintage 59 Les Paul Flametop. I don't have it out of the case right now, but I'll show it another time. So I just thought, well, yeah. So I decided to trade or sell one of my Ibanez gems, and the real first vintage guitar I got was a 1963 Gibson SG Junior, which is phenomenal, with one P90 pickup, the wraparound. This one's got Grover's been added to it. It's a fantastic guitar. Just sounds amazing. It's got really nice mahogany, you know, Brazilian rosewood neck on it. Fantastic guitar. And yeah, it was my first real vintage guitar. And the reason I like vintage guitars is, you know, I don't know, they just sound cool and they play different, and it makes you play, you know, a different style than you usually play. Like if you're playing a Steve Vai gem or an ESP, you know, you're going to probably do some rock or some metal or shred or, you know what I mean, thrash or whatever it is, you know, solos and stuff. But when you pick up a vintage guitar, even though I still try and thrash on them or play metal or rock, is you start playing different styles, like classic rock or blues, you know, and it's just a really cool way to kind of get into different styles of music. And then you think, well, who used you know, an SG Junior or an SG, an old Gibson SG, and you know, Pete Townsend. The guy from the Doors had a nice SG. I mean, Angus Young's played an SG forever. He was actually using an old, I think it was a 60s one, a black one they painted, I think, on one of the tours recently. So it's really cool to get into vintage guitars. It's just, you know, the sound is different. You know, the neck on this is fairly thick. It's not too wide, but kind of a bit thinner down the bottom, and it's just fantastic. And yeah, it's just, you know, I've got quite a few vintage guitars, and the sound and the quality of the workmanship, you know, is all handmade and, you know, not, I mean, mass produced to a degree, but not like it is today. You know, so I really love vintage guitars. You can't really duplicate the sound. They try with these reissues, the historics and whatnot, and you know, there's a lot of great pickups and companies are doing a good job, you know, but you just can't really match the you know, the wood on it and the relicking. There's just something about old wood that resonates, you know, like, you know, Paul Reed Smith, you know, always talks about how, you know, wood sounds when you knock it, you can tell. And this one is pretty good. It's got good weight. So yeah, definitely vintage guitars. You know, that's a 63 SG Junior. Sounds amazing. And as far as newer guitars, what do we got here? Let's have a look. Geez, there's so many to pick. Okay, well, we'll look at this Eclipse here. This is my ESP Eclipse. You know, obviously I use it a lot. I've toured with it. This is Japanese, the standard series, 2006, mahogany, EMG pickups, ebony board. The neck on this is, it's not too thick, it's not too thin, it's kind of a less polished neck. It's nice and light, it's got gold hardware, locking tuners on it, and there's Spurzl. I get a closer look at this. You know, it's got a bit of wear. I've toured and recorded with this, and fantastic guitar. I've used it in my band Snake Eyes, recording and touring, and with the band India when I was touring with them last year or the year before. These are fantastic. I started getting into ESP guitars in the 90s. I think my first was a George Lynch Kamikaze. I think I still have that one. I got 2 Kamikazes, and ESPs are fantastic guitars. Obviously the weight, this isn't too heavy, probably maybe 7.5 pounds roughly. And, they're a lot lighter to play on stage, and, that's good if you're doing a lot of gigs, or, if you got back problems, or, sometimes you get injuries. And so I find these a lot easier to play on stage, and they sound fantastic. I mean, obviously I like them with Seymour Duncan's too, but the quality is fantastic. I mean, obviously it doesn't have a vintage sound, it's more of a modern sound with the EMGs because they're active, right? The battery goes in there, but great for metal. You're okay for rock. Ebony fingerboard. I love ebony. It's an alternative, from buying a Les Paul. Les Pauls are probably a little bit more difficult to play sometimes because the necks are bigger, or sometimes the frets aren't as good, or it just depends on which model it is. But if you're into metal and rock, ESPs are great guitars for that. And I've got quite a few, and I really like playing ESP because they're probably a little bit easier than some of the Les Pauls. Some of the Les Pauls do play like butter. It's a completely different sound though, but it's just a matter of taste. So it's cool to have vintage and then newer guitars. I mean, there's lots of great newer guitars, and it's Japanese too. Japanese make fantastic guitars, so definitely get an ESP or any type of Japanese guitar. What else have we got? Let's have a look here. Oh boy, geez, the selection. Let's have a look at, where is it? One of these, another Japanese one. This is a CMI, which is made by Ibanez. This is really old. It's from the 70s. It's quite a heavy body. I think it's mahogany. I'm not exactly sure. I think the Bill Lawrence type pickup's got 5-way. It's like an L6S. It's black. It's a bolt-on neck. Yeah, it's got a funny strap button on the neck. It's fantastic. Rosewood. I say these were made by Ibanez, but they put different names on them. These are really cool. They're hard to find, but they're really priced cheap, And I played lots of Gibson L6Ss, and they're pretty cool. But these, I've got like 4 different ones, are fantastic. The quality is almost as good as Gibson. It's even got the volute on the back there. It's got kind of like a lawsuit headstock, as they say. Fantastic guitars. This has got some weight. Yeah, these are really cool. I mean, they're hard to find. Sometimes you have to get them from Japan, and they sound great. I mean, this one's got lots of wear. The tuners have been changed. CMI is Ibanez. Fantastic, if you can find them. This is probably from the 70s. I don't know exactly what year. It doesn't have a serial in there, but it's definitely early 70s or mid 70s, if that. It's got, like I say, it's got the 5-way, which is cool. Fantastic. I don't know how much I paid. I'm not going to sell it, but it's definitely cheaper than a Gibson. And I mean, I love Gibson guitars, but this is an alternative, so definitely check out Japanese guitars. What else have we got? Let's look at a newer guitar. What else we got newer? Oh boy. We got lots of stuff. How about a Telecaster? No. Oh, this. No, we're gonna look. We want an older one. I know what we found. Hopefully, I don't knock or make an accident here. Where's my roadie? This is a 1963 Melody Maker. Now, this is what you call road worn and relict. It's absolutely beat, which is a good thing. Look at that checking and everything. Hopefully, it's turning out. It's a 63 Melody Maker. I've had this one quite a few years. Yeah, 63. It's all original. It's got one single coil pickup, a wraparound volume tone. You know, it's got a pretty thick neck on it, but it really resonates good. Yeah, it's just fantastic, and like I say, the sound out of this thing is actually pretty warm, considering. And you know, where the neck joins the body is a bit funky. You know, you get used to it. I think Pat Travers used to play one for a while. I think he stuck a humbucker in there. Excuse me, and they're very reasonably priced for a vintage guitar. I'd say if you want to get into the guitar market, like vintage guitars, get a Melody Maker or something. They're fairly cheap, you know, I don't know, $1,000 or so, depending, you know, US dollars. You know, I think I've got 3 or 4. I've got an Epiphone Melody Maker and 2 other Gibsons. I think I got a 65 and a 60. I got a single cut one, or 1959, I think it is. I lost count anyways. But these are fantastic. You know, the single coil is okay. You know, if you got a decent amp or a pedal or something, it'll sound great. Just depends what kind of style. But I got heavy strings on this thing, and fantastic. I mean, the quality, you know, of an old guitar is so much different than a new one. And like I say, it's a one-piece slab mahogany body. You know, obviously, you know, it's hand built, and in those days the parts and labor was really, you know, well done. You know, there's some new stuff that's cool, but this has just got a lot of wear on it, and it's just fantastic. I don't know if you can check it out. These are great. You know, these were like budget guitars back in the day, and the neck is huge. I'm just holding on to it, and even though it's a 63, I think, yeah, 63. Anyways, yeah, just talking about vintage and newer guitars. Thanks very much for watching. If you can, check out Japanese guitars from the 70s or 80s. Any Japanese guitars are fantastic. Anyways, please smash the like button, yeah, and subscribe. Really appreciate all your support, and thanks for watching. And remember, it doesn't matter what guitar you play, as long as you keep playing and rock. Take care, everyone.